Okay, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Get Your Shit Together podcast with Yana Kasperzak. And today you're tuning into another amazing episode of our special series, Your Journey of Becoming From Dreaming to Doing. This is where real women share their real life stories, all the messy, the magical, the middle part of who they are meant to be. Because the truth and the reality is that your dream life does not start when everything is perfect. It starts when everything is messy and the moment you say, I am done playing small. When you've had enough once and for all and ready to do what it takes once and for all so you can stop dreaming and you can actually start doing, you can start building. And if you're ready to say that you're done and to take that action that you're going to be learning today from an amazing guest, then grab your coffee, light your candle, and let's get into it. Today, I am joined by Charlie Butler, who is a self mastery coach who helps ambitious entrepreneurs move beyond that burnout point and into alignment, ease, and fulfillment. She's also known for her, I would call it, a rare blend of grounded presence and sharp insight, where she creates spaces for people to finally let go of that pressure to hold it all together and to perform and refine success on their own terms. Her work combines mindset mastery, nervous system regulation, and trauma informed practices like breath work to create those powerful shifts that last, that each and every one of us wants and desires. And you're going to absolutely love her story. But before we get into that story, we have a tiny little funny moment that I feel like is important to share. And I'll just say it for what it is. Yesterday, we hopped on and we were so excited and we recorded the podcast, and it was so fun. Only by the end, I realized that podcast was not being recorded. And I was like, oh my God, that was so good. It was so gold. And I told my daughter, and she ratted me out to my husband. So now here we are. Luckily, Charlie was gracious enough to not only understand, because I'm sure you've been through like similar-ish things, but this is how, in many ways, we're all getting our shit together. Nobody's perfect. Like, I would say I fucked up yesterday, but now I get to meet Charlie and talk to her for the third time. The first time was just the 15 minutes. So I would say I'm lucky. But since this is the Get Your Shit Together podcast, and this is how I like to start it off, is I want to hear from you, Charlie. When did you realize that how did you start getting your shit together in your life that brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And I love your approach to, yeah, we all make mistakes, right? And it's okay. And it's better to be open and honest about it than beat ourselves up about it. So it's good to be here. Yes, how I began to get my shit together. Well, I'd love to say it was a really succinct process, but I think again that would just be trying to sound smart and like I've got it all together. And I think the reality is I still don't have all my shit together. It's a constant journey, right?
Right.
And I think I would almost argue that that is one of the biggest pieces of realization that one comes to is that this is not about getting to a destination. This is about the process of enjoying life and continuing to learn and grow and become a better version of yourself. Like for me to be more honest and more consistently who I am and just beginning to understand who that is. I think after
Yeah.
nearly nearly 3 decades of um, chasing the wrong version of success and trying to fit in and curate myself to be palatable and
Hmm.
acceptable, I had piece by piece lost my real sense of self. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my opinion was on critical things in life. I'd even changed the taste of my music depending on who I was around. Like I was that much, that desperate to fit in and be accepted that who I was didn't matter. Who people wanted me to be was what was important. And again, not completely conscious of that, just
Yeah.
that became just how I operated, right? So the the process of becoming who I am today was for me was a pretty was pretty messy. I guess I like to talk to people about some people get the feather, the brick, or the bus. And so sometimes you just get like a light, the feather that's like this sense of like, oh, I'm not, that I anticipate or I think that there's something else I should be doing. And some people start to move in a different direction. Some people get a brick, maybe something a little bit more painful, a little bit more abrupt happens, a job loss, a relationship terminating, whatever. I got the bus. So I hit absolute rock bottom. I had to like accept that my life had become unmanageable. I had become an alcoholic, a drug addict, a workaholic, and I was not functioning, and I had to go to rehab. And so everything came to a halt. And I went into this place and I stopped. I had to quit, I had to close a lot of my contracts and put my work on hold. My husband had to take my children home and look after them, and I had to just sit with myself.
Yeah, and I know we talked a little bit about that yesterday, which only you and I would hear. That experience while you were in rehab. Can you share with everyone what that was like for you on that end, and especially as a mother?
Yeah. I think, the 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 experience of feeling like you're letting everybody down um was extremely painful for me, especially my daughters. I mean, my youngest daughter she only just turned 5, and I think very difficult for her to understand like where I was or what was happening, why I couldn't come home. And, you know, I yeah, I had to grapple a lot with myself inside where I was. There was like no technology. Like I could call my family once a week. I had a 20-minute phone call once a week
Yeah.
um, to be able to talk to them. And I guess all the rest of the time you are, yeah, you're just in this space with yourself, with these other people also doing recovery, also trying to find their way out of their misery, all at different stages. And yeah, it was confronting because you got like I had no distractions.
Right.
Um, I mean, I worked out a lot. That's probably the only distraction I maintained, in terms of like, but I had no work to be busy with and no technology to scroll and distract and like, nothing. So
Mhm.
it was again, a very, very intensive experience of having to stop everything I was doing and simply face myself. And I think I can reflect now and see that what I would have just described as the worst possible thing to happen. I mean, to come to a realization that your life is unmanageable and that you are doing damage not only to yourself but to those around you, um, and that you are an alcoholic and an addict is by far the worst thing I could have thought I'd have to admit. Um, and yet the greatest turning point in my life. Like,
Yeah. What would you say made it the greatest turning point of your life?
because for the first time I stopped just chasing an illusion of what I thought this life was about,
Mm.
the illusion of who I thought I needed to be. I was carrying resentments to and that had become almost part of my identity. Like I was entitled. I was entitled to my misery and I was
Mm.
defending it like it was
Yeah.
It was mine to own. And yet that very misery was at the center of why I was unhappy.
Yeah, that's powerful. I I hear this all the time and I see it all the time, and we can only see and hear things as we have experienced them ourselves. That's why I say we can meet other people at the depths that we have met
Mhm.
ourselves. And there is quite a bit of that, either blaming external circumstances for our life or blaming others and not taking ownership of things. And at the same time, refusing to admit our own limiting beliefs, destructive behaviors, habits, all these different things, even our personality traits that makes us us, that people see and notice and they point out, but we fight for them and fighting for our limiting beliefs and fighting for our life staying the same because even though we know that this is not the life that we want and there's so much more, but it's so comfortable that getting outside of that comfort zone is the scariest thing in the world. And you were
And I think,
talking,
it's
yeah,
important to that point is so important because that's how we're wired. Like, so this is where
exactly.
for me science became so important. Like when I wanted to really understand understand myself, and it was like that's how we're wired. So like
Yeah,
brain is wired for survival, and so you're going to keep falling back to what's familiar, even if familiar is destructive. And
yeah, even if it's not
it's not
safe.
it's not a failure of your
Yeah,
character, or it's not because of all these other nasty things that I used to say, I'm just stupid and lazy and all these like,
right?
really mean things that I would then, you know, talk about myself as. And it was like, hang on. One, does that strategy of beating myself up help me at all? No. And two, if this is how I'm wired, if I begin to understand better how I'm wired, I can work with myself, not against myself.
Exactly. And when we start to understand, like you said, we start to work with ourselves. We're not working against ourselves. This is where now many people would call it manifesting the life that you want, but it's really just also understanding and doing something about the understanding. Because many
Hmm.
people understand, but then many of
Yeah.
those many people don't take any action and don't do anything about it because now they use that intelligence to excuse away their behaviors and actions or lack thereof.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, I did, so my mum passed away from cancer when I was 14. And I'd say over that period of time, so over nearly a 30-year time frame, I had on and off 15 years of counseling, like some in big patches of it, right? And like I respect counseling and it kept my head above water. But what it never translated into was any kind of implementation in my life. So I would
Mm,
go to my
mhm,
sessions and I got to understand myself, boy. And like I got, and then because I'm a bit of a science nerd, I'll go into the depth of these things to understand them even more. And I feel like what that did was solidify, like, this is who I am. Almost like I defined myself by these terminologies. I'm just depressed, and these traumas have happened. So that's just my, like, it's like the menu that I received. Because then my father passed away from cancer as well when I was
wow.
26. You know. So it didn't just stop. I didn't have one. I've had many, many of these sorts of very high shifting traumatic events that then meant that it just kept coming like waves, right? And so it was like, oh,
Mm,
well, this is just my lot. And I think the breakthrough for me was when I was able to start to break down some of those stories that this is just what my life's like, and begin to shift, like started with like loving myself enough to want to begin to change things, to be able to have the courage to look at the things I was doing because I was the creator of my reality. Therefore, I was the problem. bitter pill to swallow, but then I was the solution as well.
Yeah.
And that's empowering because I could stop blaming, you know, the world out there, people, places, things, that I didn't have the resources others did. I didn't have the chances others did, all of those sorts of things, and start to
Mhm.
actually take my power back and start to do something small, small things, caring enough to, you know, wash your face and put cream on it nicely. Like small, small things, acts of self-love to just to begin to build the belief that I could do something different and to begin to trust myself again that I could be consistent, that I could show up and do the things to create the change I want. And then you one little stone, one little step adds up.
Yeah. And I would I feel like this is how we discover true love. Because true love, we really begin to understand it when we start to love ourselves.
Hmm. Do you know the experience of talking, oh, it's gonna make me emotional, but the experience of talking to my daughters on the phone when I was in rehab, because
Mm.
at that stage, at those first few weeks I was there, like I was pretty much convinced that I was a piece of shit, right? Like I'm like, this is you, right? This is you are, you know, can't even look after your own children. You can't show up in your life. Like, what are you worth? And to hear the excitement of my children when they got to speak to me and my husband, and then to hear the distress when they had to say goodbye to me. And I remember sitting afterwards after one particular phone call of like my daughter being, as I said, she was only 5, and so she was just so upset. She couldn't understand why won't you come home, Mum? And
Mm.
I sat there and the experience I had was like, why does she care? Like, why do I matter to her so much? Like, I couldn't understand that I mattered.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't. It felt really foreign, and I was like, whoa, okay. There's something deeper there that like I obviously had a deep belief that like, I don't matter. But
Yeah.
what I was experiencing when I put so much down and now I was so much more raw was like when I was receiving that love from my daughter and that I need you, Mum. It was like, oh, so maybe I do matter.
Yeah.
And it's those little, change doesn't, some people have like kaboom moments, right? But for me, change was little small, like little cracks in my armor
Yeah.
that I had created to keep me safe, small cracks in it to begin to like very, carefully start to feel into,
Mm.
well, if I matter to her, who
Yeah.
else do I matter to? And if I matter, then that means that I have a purpose here. And suddenly I was like, oh, okay. Well, if I have purpose, then maybe I should try stick around. Maybe I should try. I'm worth something, you know.
Yeah. I believe every human being that is still alive is here for a purpose. And most of us will continue to question our purpose, and our purpose in many ways grows and evolves just like we do.
Mm.
And for many people, I feel like maybe not just for many people, for all of us, this is really what gets us out of bed. Even if we don't want to get out of bed, and even though we feel lost of purpose, temporarily, even though it doesn't feel like it's temporary, it feels like it's forever. What's the point? What's my purpose? Why am I here? Why do I bother? Nobody cares. Nobody will notice that I'm even gone. All these thoughts that go by, everybody's life will be easier. Like for me, that was the one that would replay in my head, that
Mm.
my kids' life will be much better if I was gone. My
Yeah.
husband's life, everybody's life, because nobody, no, I anger upset everyone, right? But then learning that they have their own baggage. They're working through their own shit and their own traumas. I might trigger it, but it's not my fault because I didn't even know they had a bomb ready to explode inside of them, that I said something or I did something that triggered them. And then learning to not take responsibility for other people's shit, for their actions, their behaviors, for who they are, for anything, because I gotta take responsibility for myself and for my own shit. And that's already enough. And I know that there was a lot that you were going through, especially in rehab, especially when you're like literally isolated from everyone. 20 minutes a week, that's nothing. And in those 20 weeks, especially if you're having those conversations with your kids like that, like, how would you feel after the conversation is done? And what got you through what is, for most people, would be the hardest part of any kind of life experience that they could go through, that you were there living while others might see it on a screen?
I think the blessing of rock bottom, like of a disgusting rock bottom place, like where I was, like you described, where I was like, they would be better off without me. I should just like do everybody a favor. When you're there, and then now like essentially being like picked up off the floor by like my siblings, and like everybody, and they're like, no, we care enough about you. We're gonna put you here because we think that's the safest place for you. And like, and then to have them want to call in and see how I am, and and like, and so then I was starting to get a sense of like, because we can get very caught up in our own world, right? Like we
Yes.
believe that our experience of the world is fact, but actually, the map is not the territory. Like our experience of the world isn't 100% the fact, because two
Exactly.
people can have the same, be on the roller coaster and have completely different experiences of that. And
Yeah.
so, like, being able to, start to stop being so so selfish, self-centered about like my version of everything, and start to let in a little bit other people's love and experience of, and sometimes that experience, other people's experience is bitter as well, right? So I had many, you know, times where it was like, I don't want to keep existing. But then those those phone calls to my kids, that became fuel to then do the work that I was there to do, right? And like, and to be thorough, and to, to decide every morning, decide again, I'm worth doing this. Like it's scary, but I'm worth doing it, because I don't want to go, I don't want to get out of here and go back to doing what I was doing and
Mm,
disappoint everybody. I don't want to go back to that place. So it was like when you shut when you shut the door or burn the bridge from where you've come, then there's only moving forward. And even as it's painful and even as it's challenging, when sometimes I would sort of think, but only for a moment, and decide again, no, I've got to keep moving forward. And so then doing the work that it took to uncover the mental cage that I had created for myself that
yeah.
was causing me so much misery. The relief of like doing, finding the resentments and forgiving, and like, and then releasing some of those things that I couldn't believe how it could like click in my mind and then in my body, like the relief of releasing resentments and, all of this shame that I carried, and, this mental load that we hold, and
Yeah.
that it remains in our body and in our minds.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
We build a mental prison. That's what I refer to, being trapped in our minds. And then when we don't deal with all the trauma, then trauma transfers actually into physical pain because it
Yeah.
gets locked in the body. And then we're going to be forced. Okay, it's like the universe says, okay, here's the lesson. You don't want to learn it? Okay, that's fine. I'll nudge you another way and another way and another way. And it does it through pain, different ways of pain: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual pain, because we can't ignore pain. But yet, there's other people who are there. Let me help you with the pain. Take this, take this, take that, and numbing the pain and numbing the human and the soul and everything. And one of the things that you said is it's recognizing that it's almost like both truths can exist at the same time. If you're having a conversation with a person or a disagreement, because this is a one that all of us can relate to, because we all have misunderstandings, disagreements, and what is the hardest thing to ever do in those kind of situations is try to win your point, because you're trying to win. But the goal is not to win. The goal is to learn and to understand. And we can do that by also recognizing that, hey, what you're saying might be crazy, or it might be the truth, or it might be something that is true. Because what's the truth and what is true are two different things. And when we allow for the other person and their thoughts and their beliefs and their viewpoints to exist, and they show that to us through conversation, we can practice doing the same. But at the same time, if the other person is not doing the work and they're not open to hearing what you got to say, and this is where the conflict can take place as well.
Yeah.
But what I really want to know is, as you're going through all of this and you're quite literally getting your shit together, who were you doing it for? Were you doing it for your kids, for your partner, for your friends, for your siblings, for yourself? Who were you really doing it all for?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's yourself, right? But I guess if I when I first, lean into that, the answer to that question is it was for those two little girls who were counting on me, right? Like that was what had kept me anchored in this place anyway, was that because of the experience of losing my own mum, I simply couldn't fail them. Like I was not
Yeah.
going to be responsible for leaving them and knowing full well what that experience was like for me.
Hmm.
The other part of that is that I watched my mother fight for nearly 6 years for her life, and so then I must have mattered enough that she wanted us to fight for her life, to be able to be a mother to myself and my brothers. So again, there's these small things that you hang to. I mean, I eventually obviously came around to like love myself enough, but at the start, that was not easy to connect to. I did not
Hmm.
like who I was, and and so that belief and that self-love had to build enough over time for me to get a sense of who I was and did I have some value. Like that took some work. So in the end, yes, it's for yourself because you want to be able to show up the way you want to show up and go out and have a positive impact. I think one of the more devastating, realizations was that I wasn't having a positive impact on the people around me. And it was like, oh, great. Okay. That's not cool. So, yeah, it's because at the end of the day, it's that connection back to others. Am I contributing here or am I taking? And so my children became like because even at the time my marriage was on the rocks. So it was, I'd love to say to my husband too, but he was like, it was kind of irrelevant to me. It was like those two little humans who I felt I
Hmm.
had, brought into this world and was responsible for nurturing them and supporting them. And I was failing at that. And I needed to get my shit together so that I could at least do that, if nothing else.
Very well said. I do notice that pattern that we do start things for others, but we continue doing it for ourselves.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
if we continue doing everything for others, then we're not taking care of ourselves. But in the
No.
end, whatever it is that we choose, it must align with ourself and our own journey. And when we do enough of the things that we don't want to do, that are taking us out of alignment, where we end up losing ourselves, and it happens so seamlessly, little by little throughout our life. That's why I say we're all healing for from our first part of our life now, right? In the second part of our life, because we have given ourselves away little by little, through our life. And yesterday we were talking about how like the chameleon. So I'd
Yeah,
love for you to talk about that that analogy and that aspect because I feel like this is something that every single listener
yeah.
will relate to.
So I think it was like 2 weeks later I had to return back to boarding school after my mom had died. And I remember the other kids kind of all being, everyone kind of would see me coming and be like nervous.
Yeah.
And so I learned very quickly to put other people at ease because, that's not because I cared about them more. That was because at the core of it, it was so that I felt okay and I could have connection with people. That's the honest truth about it. Like we think people pleasing is about the other people. It's about
Yeah, and that's
ourselves.
why we continue because it makes us feel good in the end, right?
Yeah. And so then like that's a very like powerful experience because suddenly, you know, I could create the situation that I needed and get the connection I needed. So I became a master of it. I became a chameleon in so many situations and I could be, you know, roughing it in, I worked for 20 years in the primary sector before I became a coach. And like so I could be in my gumboots in the dust, kicking around the dirt, talking about compost and whatever with farmers and and the struggle of getting, Mother Nature and those kinds of things. And then I could be sitting around a board table in a suit, talking about finances and budgets and allocations and I could swap between these different roles with seamlessly.
Yeah.
And I saw it as quite a skill. What I didn't realize that as I did this from 14, each time I was doing it, I was losing a sense of who I was because I was slowly diminishing that. It's a little bit like just sort of
Yeah.
scratching away at, and I lost a sense of who I was. And so preferences, my position on things just would depend on who's the audience, and where am I and what's required of me. And so those were the questions I would ask before I would respond about what I thought about something that someone had asked me. Who are
Hmm.
they? What do they expect? What's the expected answer here? And I think the sad thing of that is that who am I? Like that self-abandonment constantly. And yeah, that's why for me, it's a journey of finding who I am because I'm still I'm still working on that. Like I'm still
Yes.
giving myself permission to sit with something that perhaps I haven't sat with ever before
Hmm.
and be like, what do I think about this? How does it make me feel? You
Yeah.
know?
Asking all the I questions, the me, the I, the
Hmm.
my, and actually answering them because you stop doing that at a young age because your role became, because especially as a child, we all want to be lovable. And that's something that most of us now as adults don't feel like we're lovable because when a parent gets mad or angry at us, or tries to teach us, we take it in as they don't love us, they don't care. But the truth and reality is that now that we are parents, now that the shoe's on the other foot and we understand, we know that's the very way how love is being showed. And especially in coming from Europe, the way that European parents would tell you and show you that they love you is criticize you to help you to grow and become a better version of yourself. Now, some more than others, I wasn't entirely raised in that exact way because my mom was and my dad were. And they saw it, they witnessed it, they experienced it, they didn't like it. So, like, we're not doing that to our daughters. It's just me and my sister. Um, but as we're going through this life that we're living, we're recognizing that sometimes the life we're living is not ours, like you did. So for you, when was that moment that you realized that the life that you were living was not yours?
Well, I guess I was extremely blessed to be really successful, right? Was running a successful consultancy business, I guess at the top of my industry, and I had a lot of money. I was making the most money I had ever before. I had lots of things, fancy car, and all all the all the measures of this version of success that
Yeah.
I had chased, right? And I kind of was there, but there was this emptiness to it. There was a hollowness to it all because it was like, yeah, is this it? You know? And that then comes with a second wave of like shame because I was like, am I so ungrateful that I can't even appreciate the gifts I have, the abundance I have created, the
Hmm.
husband and the children and the home and all the things. And I like still sat there with this emptiness. And
Yeah.
it was, yeah, it was really difficult because it was then just kept making me think I've got to just work harder or they've just got to be more. But I didn't know where to focus that energy. And I guess the moment I realized that it wasn't my life was I found myself locked in a bathroom, sitting on a cold floor, and I was screaming into a towel that I had just ripped from the rail. And I was screaming into this towel because my daughters were in the next door room and I didn't want them to hear me. And it was only 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was completely overwhelmed by my responsibilities, by my
Yeah.
like the needs on me, and I just literally felt like I couldn't get up off the floor. I didn't know what to do. And it was like in that moment, something just like opened up for me that it was like, I can't keep doing this. This is not this is not what I want. I need help. And I think having been the strong eldest child after my mom died, the an automatic leader in most of the circles I moved through, like always having been the strong, reliable, dependent one, asking for help was difficult, was not, was a sign of weakness. And so
Yeah.
to suddenly realize that like, no, I need help. It was like, I don't want this. Do you know what I mean? Like I was like, there's there's so much misalignment here because I've created all of the success and yet it feels bad.
Mhm.
It feels terrible. And I was like, I'm missing all of the point. Like because I was pouring everything in all my energy and effort and focus into my clients and my staff and my business partners and the community I lived in and everywhere else. And yet I had nothing for
Yeah.
home, for my marriage, for my children, for myself. So the success I was creating was coming at such a great cost. And that was the misalignment. I was chasing the illusion. And even though I was like obtaining the illusion and but it was falling on like, I want to say like deaf ears because it was not there was no satisfaction to it. It was like, is this it? Is this what life's about?
Yeah. It feels like death in some ways, where right before, and usually it does happen right before we have a breakthrough. In order for us to have a breakthrough, there has to be a breakdown. And it's a breakdown of all of the systems where it's like the computer crashing, and then you need to bring the computer to the expert to help you fix the computer. Meanwhile, we're the computer and we are not broken, even though we feel like we're broken. As you're talking about your bathroom moment, and I'm sure that's not the only moment, but that's the moment that stands out the most. Yesterday, when we were just wrapping up, I mentioned that for me, I remember crying over the sink, having to wash dishes because, and it wasn't the dishes, it was an accumulation of mundane living, is what I refer to it as, that success ladder that you were talking about. That in order for me to be successful, because we'll create essentially the same mold for success, but it differs a little bit. But it comes down to you got to have a place to live, a house, usually, right? White picket fence is usually what we all think of, and children and you got to be married and you got to have pets and take care of everything. Everything needs to be spotless, cleaned. And I've always been, I guess now I'm learning I have OCD. I like things organized and clean. That doesn't necessarily mean my house is that way right now. We're also doing renovations and it becomes a lot. Like living becomes a lot. So, what would you say brought you to that breaking point? Or what were the things? Because, like as I said, it's not just one, it's usually an accumulation. Just like a person doesn't just explode and gets angry over one thing, it's an accumulation of different things or similar things that are taking place. So, what was it for you?
Well, even as you were talking, I was like, yeah, I remember having all of these rules about like myself, about life, like these expectations that was like the standards of how things needed to be. And like, how my children needed to be dressed and looked, how my home needed to be
Are
like
you right?
experienced. And it was like this pressure all the time. And so it does, it turns, like I think for me, it was just this crushing sense of responsibility all the time because there was just so much to do always, and it was just never enough as well, right? Like because my standards were so high, I could never feel like I had done enough. So when you're just living under that sustained level of pressure all the time, it's just, and then, I'd have those days where I'd just be like, oh, fuck it all, like, I'm a failure. May as well just fail colossally. And I think those were then the moments that gave me the excuse to be able to like to drink or to numb myself, and be like, oh, then that's okay. It's okay if I do this. Like I'm warranted to. Um, and so all of the joyful stuff just gets like lost in all of the, I call it life admin. you
Yeah.
know, it's like because there was this illusion I had of like when I get there, like I've just got to get through now to get to some future state that's going to be better. Because once I'm wealthier, once I'm this, once I'm more educated, once my home is tidy, then I can relax. Once my children are, fed and bathed, then I can relax this evening. Like there was always some kind of rule of like when I could then, and so every everything I was doing was just a means to an end. And so you lose the joy of just being in a moment of like just sitting on the side of the bath, watching my children like bath, like instead of it was just a task, like let me just wash you and get you out and dry you and get you into pajama, like
Yeah,
so
checklist.
there's no joy in any of the things that your life is made up of because I was like, I just need to move through this to get to here. Then I need to move through this to get to here. And
Hmm.
it's all that just accumulates because then you got to get up in the morning and you got to do it all again.
Right?
And the
Like,
laundry basket's full again, and the bloody dishes have to be done, and you got to make lunch boxes again. And then and I was like Groundhog Day, just
right.
rinse and repeat. And it was
That,
again,
right? That's what does us in. Like, literally, that Groundhog Day. Anyone can go crazy of the same thing over and over and over again when we're not. Whereas when we're kids, it was different thing all the time. At least for me growing up, it was. We didn't have technology. We didn't have what our kids have now. Our parents didn't want us in the house. And we as kids, we also didn't want to be in the house. We wanted to be outside and explore. And some of the things that I've done, I'm still surprised how I'm still even alive, that even just thinking about my kids doing those things, I could have a heart attack, right? Like just one example, living in Russia, I was a small little person and I would squeeze through these bars to get to the roof of a 9-story building. And I would walk at the edge of this building while it was windy. Why? Kids don't know why they do the things that they do. There's no thought process. But now that we become adults and then that thought process clicks in, and this is where the awakening begins, where we go through these stages, as I was saying it yesterday, as like, in order for this version of me to live, there must be a version of me that needs to die, quote unquote, that needs to be let go of and released into the ether, into wherever we're sending her to, so that way this version can't exist. And we keep doing that over and over again because we do go back to a previous version, but the previous version is not that original version. So, as you've gone through all of these versions of yourself, what version of yourself that sends out the most, that in order for this version to be here now, you had to say goodbye to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the 14-year-old version of me who
Mm,
believed that she had to be strong and take care of others, and that it wasn't okay to have emotions, and that I had to be what the world required of me. I think that was one of the biggest misunderstandings that ruled my life for a very long time.
mm,
And I guess I saw the innocence in that misunderstanding. And instead of it being a part of me that then I had to reject or control, it was like bringing her in, bringing her in to be like, it's okay. It's all right to have needed help. It's okay to cry. You're not too much, and embrace that part of me to create the freedom for me to be, you know, this courageous, authentic, loving version of me that yeah, I certainly wasn't before. I was a lot hard. I was hard and on myself and on other people. And I was had these high expectations, and I was definitely not authentic. I was completely inauthentic because you know, I would morph to suit this situation to gain from the circumstances what I required. And when you're doing that, that's just etching away at who you are. And that sense of like, I think that feeds into imposter syndrome massively because it was like, any minute now I'm going to be discovered was that feeling. And I was like, because actually, when everyone realizes that, you know, I'm just showing up the way I think I should be, there was some sense of like, I'm not being true. And that was
yeah.
undermining me. And, I think my business partner said it the other day where she was like, well, you just put it all out there. She's like, short of taking a nude selfie, you've just put it all out there basically of like, I'm not afraid to speak my truth and to speak about my journey because I, it doesn't weigh me down anymore. There's no shame involved in it. It's like, it is what it is. And actually by sharing authentically, I guess what I do, my experience is that I create safety for others to let go of the facade, to begin to be like to breathe and be like, oh, thank goodness you said that. Okay, actually, I'm struggling. Actually, do you know, I find this really difficult. Like, and it's such a special experience that I get. And what am I doing? I'm being honest. I'm sharing my truth. And like that's still kind of like what? It's too simple.
It is not simple because if it was, everybody would be doing it. And that's why others admire those who are open and honest and truthful. And those who are not, we can only have that facade and hide behind that facade for so long until it's like Titanic, until the ship goes down and there's nothing you can do about it. And then you're going to be left with the truth only. And that's one of the things that you simply cannot hide because eventually the truth is always revealed. It can only be hidden for so long. And when it's revealed, then what happens? As
Yeah.
you're talking, it made me even think of like scammers because in some ways, this is where we're like living the world, quote unquote, scamming the world, pretending to be someone for everyone to make sure that they're happy
Hmm.
and that we're happy that they're happy and we're happy because they're happy. But in reality, we're losing ourselves being the chameleon and being this thousand different versions for everyone we know because this is what they want and they need from us, but not realizing that this is not what we want and need. And then one day, we're left with just the truth and the reality that we have lost ourselves and now now what? And which means that we've lived with so many different lies. And when it comes to these lies, I'd love to know what was the biggest lie that you were living that felt normal until that lie broke you.
I think the biggest lie was I had it all under control. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like,
Yeah, I do.
and I remember people saying it to me. They'd be like, "My
You,
goodness, you're incredible because look at you. You're immaculately turned out. You've got these two beautiful children. You've got a successful business. You know, wow. How do you do it all?" And I would
right?
just be like,
Magic. While your eyes are twitching, right?
I don't really. Yeah, and so it was, and this is what I mean about this imposter syndrome, right? Was that then I'd be like, well, if you really looked under the hood, you'd see that there's a little bit more going on and it's not as perfect as it looks. So it was this projection of perfection and that I had everything under control. And
Mm,
actually it was like a duck on water. Like I look, or a swan, it was like looks all glamorous
yeah.
and look at me going along, but actually underneath the water there's just these legs and they're going like this and there was so much struggle. I was struggling so much and I just didn't feel safe to put it anywhere. I didn't know where to put it. And
Mm,
it didn't feel safe to, and the few times I took it to different places, it was like, yeah, people would be my experience of that would people would almost be overwhelmed by me and my my problems. So then you do that a couple of times and you go, okay, no, I'm too much. I must just keep this to myself. And so it's carrying this self-created burden, right? Because these are all of my rules and assumptions. And I like what you said before, where you say we we're pleasing everybody, giving them what we think they need.
right.
Who are we to think what other people need? And why do we create these needs that then we must
Right.
fulfill? Like,
We create the
oh, there's no
problem
arrogance in
ourselves,
that.
and then here's the solution for that problem. It all happens in the mind.
And so then you actually begin to like, and this is why people have such issue with boundaries because they're like, oh, well, that makes me unloving or whatever else. And it's like, it is the most loving thing to do
Exactly.
because for me, what it creates is a sense of like certainty.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, not only am I respecting myself, but I'm also respecting the other person to say, I'm not going to resent you by saying yes to something. I don't want to come to your Tupperware party. I might deliver it very nicely and be like, thank you for the offer, you know.
Yeah.
But one of the first little tricks I learned was to say, because I was just a yeser, was to learn to say, thank you for the offer. Let me come back to you on that. And I literally had to have it rehearsed so that I stopped myself from being like, yes, 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 to everybody.
Yep.
It was like, whoa, pause. So that I could go away and go, do I really want to do this thing? How do I feel about doing this thing? Am I just trying to please that other person? Why
Hmm.
do I need to please them? And will me showing up to something I don't want to do, will I actually please them or will I be resentful and begrudging them? And then will I invoice them? Like, will I be like, so I had to do that shitty thing that you wanted me to do. So now I expect you to do something that I want you to do.
Right.
And woe betide if you don't do it when I call upon you for my favor. And that almost like silent exchange that we'd end up doing with, so especially with, for me with my husband, it was like a silent exchange of like, okay, you've gone and been allowed to do that for a couple of hours. Now I have a couple of hours of my own free time coming up soon.
Yeah.
You best know I'm going to be checking that in.
Yeah. And it's important, right? Just like for me, I learned that no is a complete sentence, and that's a boundary. You say no. Somebody asks you to do something, you can simply say no without explaining. Whereas before, if I
Yeah.
did say no, I would explain away why I'm saying no. And that person is intelligent enough to hear my explanation of what they need to hear to get a yes out of me. Right? And I mean, that's fucking magical. I gotta learn how to do that. It's because manipulating is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing. You just, what you're really doing as coaches, I feel like we do that all the time where we hear what the person is saying and we help them to hear themselves and understand themselves without telling them what we're hearing and what we're understanding, right?
Yeah.
You can call it manipulation, but it really is listening to understand and then helping,
It's
right?
self-inquiry. We are facilitating self-inquiry.
Yes.
I wouldn't say it's manipulation because it's like I'm not trying to give you any kind of answer, and I don't I don't benefit directly from you obtaining the answer. I do benefit because then you start to make some changes in your life, and that's my intention of working with you. But as a coach, my whole purpose is to support you to navigate your self-inquiry, to get to the realization that you require. Because if I tell you, like you say, there's no value in that.
There's
But if
not.
get it yourself, suddenly you wake up. It's like popping a bubble that you've been living in this little bubble all
Yeah.
your life. And suddenly you pop your bubble and you free yourself from something that like, is this not how everybody else lives?
Yeah. And we're
Is this
also at
not
the
what is
core.
required of me?
No, not everything is required of us. What's required of us is
Yeah.
to discover ourselves. And I feel like at our core we're all rebellious. We don't like to be told what to do or how to do it. So if I come, and I learned this through the coach training as well, because the example was given to us that if you give a solution to your client, they're less likely to actually even take action on that solution because it was never their idea. But if
Yeah.
the idea is theirs, they will be much more likely to actually not only do it but also follow through. And I know as human beings, ego is there. And the ego wants to take like wants to take, I forgot what the word is, but it's like you are successful because the credit, we want to take credit as a human being, we want to take credit. But as a coach, it's actually, at least in the way that I learned how to be a coach, is always giving the credit. Oh, my life is this way because of Yana. No, your life is not this way because of me. It's because of you. You're the one that did all that work. You can also, Charlie, you can say, hey, my life is this way because of rehab, but it's not. It's because of you and the journey that you have chosen to go on and the mentors that you chose to have in your life. And it's not because of any specific mentor, not because of any specific one choice, but it's an accumulation of different things. And in the end, we take credit for ourselves and our own achievements and successes, and we can't take credit for others. That's a coach on the field. That's a whole different kind of a coach. Here, we're a coach that helps a person to discover themselves and what they want in life and from life. And for all of our clients, there's a moment of that enough is enough and they change and they shift. But it all started for ourselves having to go through life and experiencing those moments where, like for you, it was that in that bathroom, right? That was the rock bottom, seeing yourself. But after that, there's other moments where you've had enough and you knew that it's either you change or everything stays this way. What was that moment for you where the decision was made and there was no going back, where you've had enough and you've suffered enough? Now it was time to do.
Yeah. Well, it was again and again when I was working through my 12 steps in you know, the
Mhm.
recovery process. And like you're having a long, hard look at yourself. And there was, you know, things there that I'd been hiding away from for a long time. And I remember sort of opening the book and beginning to read some of the questions and just like slamming the book shut and being like, fuck this, I'm not doing this, and getting up and
Right.
leaving and stomping away and then sitting with myself and being like, Okay, well, you can be as stubborn as you like. Like, how long are you going to let this take?
Mhm.
And I like to talk about you can either do life kicking and screaming or, laughing and smiling. And it's like
Yeah.
I was I was still pretty determined to, you know, I guess to stay in my stubborn ways and to be like, this is, and until I could start to loosen up a bit. And so, like again, there's some extreme vulnerability in doing the work I was doing in small group environment where you live. I lived there. There's no getting away. I
Yeah.
did a lot of running and a lot of working out, and there was a punching bag that there was no boxing gloves for the women, but I used to kick that boxing bag. My gracious, you want to know?
Hey, whatever works.
Yeah. And then come back, sit down, and carry on doing the thing. So I guess it's like just again and again having to come back to the decision of like, do I want to go back there or do I want to keep moving forward? And the moving forward required me to squeeze through this really uncomfortable place. Like I think it's like you said a little bit earlier in our conversation, like before a breakthrough, there's always this real compression, kind of like real squeezy bit where you're pushing through the eye of the needle to kind of come out the other side. And if you can withstand and sustain the momentum to keep going, when you pop out the other side, it's like, yeah, it's that, suddenly the expansiveness because it's like, oh, the relief of like, I've released myself from that baggage and suddenly I've had an opening in my thinking, in my awareness that like, you know, look at the possibility now. Once I've cleared space and removed some of you know, the haze and the lenses and the
Mm,
definitions and the assumptions that I had about life, about myself. Yeah. Yeah. So it was many, many moments because it's a very intensive environment that I went into. And I think that's, as I said to you, that was what I needed, right? Like so many people that I work with, my business partner Ash, she didn't like other people don't need the bus and the rehab process. I did.
mhm.
That was just my journey. I was incredibly stubborn and I was pretty resilient in the face of struggle. I could suffer. Man, I could
Yeah.
suffer. So
And
it
wear
was
it as
like
a badge.
to break to break the suffering for me obviously took an intensive situation. That is not required for everybody. That's the good news.
No.
And I see other people doing something, what I did in a 12-week process, in an intensive 12-week process where I lived and breathed it and did nothing else but look at myself. What that enabled me to do compared to what someone might do over 3 years, 4 years, 10 years,
That's
a
true.
lifetime. You
Yeah.
know, I got it in a little nice compacted, yeah.
Yeah. But honestly, that's the best thing because also looking at it a different way, not everybody needs a bus. Some people might need just one person. And really, this is where a coach comes in. And this is the difference between consultants, as you were sharing earlier, that it wasn't really even like after you lost your mom and you were going to people to help you, it wasn't giving you anything actionable to do. And
Mm.
this is what's different about coaches. A coach will give you homework. Will, like, you went to a bus full of coaches to help you find yourself and discover yourself. So those who are listening, you need a bus? Go find a bus. Get on the bus and stay on the bus until you arrive to where you want to arrive to. You need just, what do you call them? White vans, right? The ones that you tell your kids to watch out, don't go near because they'll throw you in the back. A white van that will fit some people. You need one of those with a few people. Go ahead and do it. One person, yes, but at the end, we need a support fortress. That is what I refer to. A
Well,
support
I think
fortress.
if you want to go, like you can go along through a change journey yourself. A lot of
Yeah,
people will do the self-help books and lots of podcasts and whatever. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I'd say that
I did that.
that's a
And I had
slow,
the
that's a
coach.
slower burn. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that can take. Whereas I think I think, and again, we as humans are wired for connection. So when you come into an environment where you begin
True.
to be seen and heard by another human, it's that like the momentum that you gain from that. And then if you go into a group coaching environment or a group environment, that is exponential again, because now
Mm,
many people are seeing you and you're being witnessed. And there's something about that that then like it's not only like accountability is it's obviously like one part of it, but it's the experience of being seen and your nervous system actually being able to like downregulate and now create safety in your body of being witnessed by another, by speaking my
mm.
truth and being witnessed that I'm still safe.
Yeah, and you're
I'm
still
still
alive.
alive. And in
Right.
fact, maybe I'm loved. Ooh, maybe I see like I'm seen and people are like now complimenting me. And so then suddenly now I'm of value. I'm not even just safe. I'm now valued. And it's
Mm.
honestly, that is the most powerful things that I see happen to the women in our group coaching. That is not quite the same with one-on-one clients. They get it like in a
Yeah.
concentrated version with myself, but it's like, yeah, the beautiful experience of being seen is something so it's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
And
No,
it's
I agree.
that's what shifts so
A
much.
community, a tribe. We are, like you said, we're wired for that connection. We are social creatures and we do need a bus. Even though some might not think that they do, they do. But a bus is not necessarily going to be all in the same way of like everybody's going to be doing the same role, the same job. People from different walks of life. And most importantly, I would say it's important to have someone in your life who is like brutally honest, maybe to a fault even, because if you want to know the truth about yourself, go to that person. If you have a friend who is honest and will tell you things that others will not, because one is people pleasing and the other one is like, listen, you like it? Great. You don't like it? Great. I don't care. I'll find somebody else, right? And that person will help us to grow in so many ways that we can't even predict. And when we're what you were talking about is like throwing that closing that book and like, no, I don't want to do that, and not doing that. Those moments I refer to as because I believe that we're all children no matter how old we are.
Yeah.
Even when we look back when we were 20, we thought we were like the shit and we were so smart. Comparatively now, we didn't know anything. And that's going to be like that for the rest of our life. So we're all children. So what we're doing in those moments is like we're throwing a temper tantrum. Because this is how a
Mhm.
child would behave, right? Like I know I watch my kids, I'm like, I do that. Really? How old am I? But what happens in the end is that an adult will go back after they're done throwing their little hissy fit, the temper tantrum, whatever you want to label it, and do it anyways. And so would a child for the most part. Without, a child would need the convincing. Here we're doing the convincing ourselves. But it's that, like we tell our kids, we might be raising a bunch of whiners and complainers, but we're not raising no quitters. Which means that you keep
Mm.
going no matter what, no matter how challenging and difficult, get it out of your system however you need to. Exercise is a great way to get it out of your system. But for others, it might not be exercise. It might be reading. For me, no, it definitely wouldn't work. But on our journey, we're losing things that we expected to lose and that we don't expect to lose. I know you also didn't expect to lose your mother, but when it comes to other things that you didn't expect to lose, in a way of you lost something on your journey throughout your life and that you didn't expect to lose it, but most importantly you didn't expect to grieve losing that thing. What would you say that was for you?
Well, I lost lots of lots of parts of my old identity. Like I lost like the victim of all of these traumatic events. I lost the depressed person who's entitled um, to be sad because if you'd experienced what I experienced, then you'd be sad too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I lost a lot of resentment I had to people who I believed had done me wrong. And
Mm.
again, that one's such an interesting one because you think, well, I have to hold on to that because it's mine and I'm entitled to be angry. Um, but it's only doing you harm. And like when you release, you know, people of that, you're releasing yourself as well from the burden
Yeah.
of carrying that around. Um, and these things were big parts of who I was, right? And so like it seemed like that would be frightening to lose those things. Yeah, and I mean, I don't, I honestly don't feel a sense of loss though. Like I don't, it's even, I can even honestly say that like I don't resent that my mother died when I was a kid. Like
Mhm.
I see now who's like, I guess if you want to make it like speak truly into it, it's like I see her sacrifice for what my journey needed to be, or my journey required for me to awaken, for me to
Yeah.
become who I am now. Even my father, I mean, he told me on his deathbed, he said, I focused on all the wrong things. I chased all the wrong stuff and didn't
Mm.
spend enough time with you kids, and I didn't focus on the things I needed to. I heard that message when I was 26. But I couldn't feel it. I heard it. Now I feel it. Now I feel it
Now you
myself.
understand it, right? Exactly.
So there's things that like, yeah, I guess fall away, but none of them, like I suppose I've also had, because now I'm not the party girl anymore. Like there's that's come with certain things that have fallen away. I don't have those some of those like friends anymore, or you know that's not who I'm going to be known for or called in to be like, hey Charlie, come and bring the party. But none of them are missed. None of them were of any value to what I experience of myself and of life now.
Hmm. That's beautiful. I love to hear that. And it sounds like you understand yourself in such profound ways that have shifted your life in to a point where the loss that you were talking about, most people are scared to lose people in their life, like friends. And you're in a place where you recognize that that itself was also a sacrifice. So was your mom. And your mom, in many ways, almost like sacrificing herself so you could have the life that you have. And we as parents, we're doing that every single day. We're sacrificing our peace and quiet for the wild life of raising a family. And I know we wouldn't want to change it for anything. And I'm curious to know, what does getting shit together actually look like for you now in real life? And not like the highlight reel that we would post on Instagram, for example, but like what does it actually look like in your daily life?
For me, the area I'm working on at the most at the moment is that the self-love, because my experience of that is that's the core of it. So if I want to make decisions about whether I'm going to make that sales call, or if I'm going to reach out, or if I'm going to make the choice of what I'm going to eat, am I going to go and exercise and move my body? All of those micro decisions that we make all the time. What those
Mhm.
like for me, what that comes back to is, do I love myself enough to nourish myself, to rest when I need to? And so it's genuinely working on loving myself, like parenting myself. Like how would I am I being a good parent to myself today? Like have I actually given myself some breakfast? It's so simple. And I think for me, I always discounted the simplicity of things. I was like, no, 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 I have a complex issue, so I need a complex problem. It was like, no,
Right?
you know. Uh, the solutions are often simple, and so simple the mind will discount them. Ugh, that's, dismiss it. But that's how you make change. Like it's the consistent things that you do daily, not the things that you do now and again.
Yeah.
And if you can connect to something that's important to you, your why. Why am I going to decide to treat myself well instead of beat myself up? Why am I going to decide to
Mhm.
get up and take action and move through my day? Why? if there's a strong enough why there, then those things become, again, I was so good at goal setting and being very orientated around like something needing an outcome. And now I can be, you know, I go and walk my dog because I like walking my dog. And I can take as long as I like, and this, I'm not counting steps and I'm not trying to do it in a certain amount of time. And I go and walk along because I'm in the moment and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It's the same with being with my children. It's like now I can be with them. I've got a stronger sense of like it's not about rushing to a destination. It's about
The
the
journey.
flow of what I'm doing and being here and noticing, is there something I don't like about this? What's going on for me? Like, that self-inquiry. So it's really paying attention to how I feel in moment by moment with what I'm doing because it is by no means perfect, and I have moments where I revert back to that, either that negative talk or I have high expectations. So I'm judging myself and comparing against where I think I should be and where I am. And again, it's like, oh, I'm doing this. Okay, interesting. What is it? And so and that comes to, for me, that's come from being able to, I love my quirky self. Look what I'm doing again. Here I am comparing.
Yeah.
When I can laugh about it, when I can, and then I'm like, it's okay. We don't have to compare anymore. Like that's that compassion. Like there's awareness and there's compassionate awareness
Hmm.
because I got caught, I was in self-awareness purgatory for a very long time where it was like, as I told you, I had very good understanding of like what was going on, what I didn't like. I understand a lot of the complexities of like the neuroscience and the psychology, but I wasn't doing anything about it.
Mm.
Compassionate awareness comes from being able to have the mindfulness to see, there's these things going on and I don't want to do them. But it's combined with compassion so that then I'm open to seeing solutions or how to do something or to get the learning from something so I can move on from it instead of it being
Yeah.
sergeant major, kind of like, you see, you're doing this again. What does that mean about me? Means I haven't got the lesson yet. Means there's something more to learn here.
Means you haven't learned yet, and that is very well said for what it takes for us to get our shit together. And that's how we're all doing it little by little every day. It's a compounding effect, as I like to call it. I used to work at the bank, so when people would bring money in, certain deposits, right, investments, there would be a compounding effect that happens, which means that you also get interest on top of the interest. And this is what happens in our life as we're doing these things and we're getting our shit together in one or more areas of our life. If you, for me, it was to stop crying at the dishes, to learn to love doing the dishes. And I found what works for me and how I enjoy doing that. And now I got to learn how to enjoy the process of watching my kids do that. And so far, I'm struggling there because when the kids hold the plates like this, I'm like, oh my God, what am I raising? Because the who I am is like I'm not scared to get my hands dirty, and I know you're not either. To get dirty, to touch things or whatever it is. Whereas my kids be like, "Oh my God, ew, dirty, disgusting food." You put that in your stomach. So as we're getting close to the end of our podcast together today, I know there's going to be many women who are going to be finding themselves relating to you in so many ways than the one. I know I did in practically every way, even like getting your shit together. It's the same thing. It's compounding effect. You just do better today than you did yesterday and stop making promises to yourself. And for me, what it looks like for me is I like to have my little check boxes and write down what I want to do for today. That works for me, not for everyone. So, for the woman that is listening right now and she's stuck in the dreaming state or doubting and overthinking phases of her life or phase of her life, what would you say to her that might get her to move? And maybe she's not even ready to hear it.
You already have all the resources you need to make and create the life you want. Nobody's got a better solution for you. You know, people's six-step strategies, like, sure, you can take from it what you need and give yourself permission to make it your own. And I think no one else can fix your life. Only you can. You need to step up and decide that you've had enough of whatever it is, and then start small with the most absolutely fucking achievable thing. Like make it so achievable that you cannot fail. Because when we do that, and we do that consistently, we build self-trust, and then we can start to expand change that we're making, the action we're taking, and extend ourselves a bit more. But when we try and overhaul our entire lives in 1 week and we set all these things, we inevitably fall over and then we just reassert see, I'm not good enough, so I need to stay here. So it needs to be tiny,
Yeah.
tiny, tiny. Experiment with it. You know, don't take everybody else's advice as fact. Experiment in your own life. There is no one size fits all. It is about finding the solution that fits for you because we are all unique and we
Yeah.
get to create the way we want to be. And that's where the joy is, the playfulness is.
And we're all Cinderellas. And I don't know if you've heard the real story of Cinderella, that the sisters would actually cut off their toes to fit into the shoe. And that is the actual story that was being told to kids, but it's in many ways teaching, reminding kids to not be a chameleon, right? To just,
I'm trying to be someone else.
yeah, don't cut your own toes. You need your toes to walk in balance. So why do that? And comparing, it's part of being human. And what we're also doing here is we're recognizing our humanness, how we're showing up as a human, that the version that we like, the version that we don't like, and learning not to take offense to people, that when somebody's calling us out on who we're being in that present moment. And I remember there was a moment in my relationship with my husband where he would tell me how I'm being at the moment, how I'm showing up and being unreasonable or whatever it was. And I stood there and I listened. And for the first time, I was able to separate who I am at the core and who I was being in that particular moment.
How
Because
you were behaving.
yes, that's different. And when in reality, most of the life that I was living, I was hearing what people were saying as this is who they see me as being all the time, and they are missing the whole point of seeing who I truly am. But that's not what happens in that moment, especially with someone like my husband. We've been together for since 2007, married, and then a year and a half before that we were dating. So I'm not even doing the math. I think it's like 19 years or something like that, just on top of my head. Um, yeah. Anyways, so someone who's seen me through it all, and we lost a twin pregnancy together. I was 22 weeks pregnant, so 5 months pregnant, and then losing a dog. I lost a job 2 weeks before we moved into our brand new house when you have a mortgage in place. So he's seen me through all of these ups and downs, and the crash and burn, my rock bottom. And I don't know if we mentioned it today, but I know we're talking about it yesterday, that rock bottom is not just one rock bottom that we hit. We hit numerous rock bottoms, but they're all on different, I'll call it, like the image that comes to mind is those zappers that the police officers have, right? And they'll shoot you with that zapper and it zaps you. It's like that zapper that brings us to our rock bottom is going to be at a different strength. So not each one of them is going to bring us down, but it's going to bring us closer until we get the message, until we'll learn the lesson we're supposed to learn. We'll continue to fall into that same pile of shit.
Yeah, so your taser is my
Taser.
feather or the brick or the bus. You know, whether you're going to let the small touch, hey, or you're gonna get like a bit more of a biff, or if you're like me, you just need to get completely taken out and like
Yeah,
get hit by a bus and then be like, okay, something needs to change.
exactly. So the last question I want to ask you is what part of yourself are you finally allowing to exist without trying to fix, hide, or prove it to anyone anymore?
The very quirky, forgetful, like weird, playful version of myself. Like I love to just I've let go so much like expectation of myself to have to be organized and this and that and like, you know, being having had an ADHD diagnosis, it made so many things make sense. And again, like I don't like labels, so I don't often like it's not
Yeah.
that's not a label for me that I want to hold on to, but it gave me compassion to understand that like, oh, maybe I'm just wired a certain way. And so then like I can embrace parts of me that I used to be very ashamed of. That now it's just like, you know, and again, it's not about being an asshole and saying, oh well, I don't do those things. It's actually about being able to find strategies to then allow for those things so that I don't carry so much shame around because I forget
Mm,
conversations I've had with my husband or whatever, you know. And so then I guess because of that lightness, like I'm a lot more playful than I ever used to be before. I can laugh at myself. Do you know what I mean? Like that, because I'm not so defensive about and so fragile about being criticized or being wrong. So
yeah.
that I'm at ease with myself. And because I'm at ease with myself, I put other people at more ease because they're not also then trying to perform to some standard, you know, around me or,
Yeah.
you know, so
And it's so much easier that way to just be you and not performing on the stage that we call life. So thank you so much, Charlie, for sharing your story, for sharing your light. I know many women will see themselves in your words and in your story and your journey, as I have as well. So, ladies, make sure that you follow Charlie. Her information, her link will be somewhere around this episode, this podcast, and connect with her. Or even to just follow her and see what she's all about. And if you love this episode, share it with a friend, share it with a sister or a mister. Because you never know who is ready to get their shit together and who maybe wants to come hang out with us inside this podcast for the conversations like this that can be life transforming. And we'll take you on a journey by sharing our journeys of becoming. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, Get Your Shit Together podcast, and not miss an episode because some of them are recorded, like this one, that you would not see live on my Facebook page. Until next time, keep showing up, keep becoming, and remember, you are not behind, you are not alone, and you're right on time, and you're exactly where you're meant to be. Until next time, thank you, everybody, and thanks, Charlie.